Okay, guys, real quick, before we get into this episode, we want to let you know what you're about to hear. Now, every year for our other brands, we do what we call a summer freelance summit. We bring in some really fantastic experts to talk about all kinds of interesting and important topics. And we thought, hey, this is great content. We should be sharing this with our Energize Your Online Business audience as well. So we called through, picked out some really fantastic episodes, and that is what you're about to hear.
Yeah. And if you hear the term freelancer or freelancing, that's because it's part of our freelance summit. But know that these topics are just as applicable to business owners of all kinds, not just our freelancing friends.
This is some really, really good stuff. We're sure you're going to enjoy it. So stay tuned. Hello, everybody. So, Megan Sumrell, for our next session, is a former corporate executive turned entrepreneur. As a business owner, mom, and wife, she knows exactly how hard it is to juggle hashtag all the things while still maintaining your own sense of self and purpose. She is the creator of the Top Program and Top Planner, a program and planner that teaches her proprietary planning and productivity system and processes. And today she's going to take us through 3 simple tools to help you stop procrastinating and start doing. And if you are someone who's like, oh, productivity systems, the way that I tend to be in the past, let me tell you that Megan's system is very different from other stuff that you've heard before. It's not regimented. It's actually all about getting things done, but also being able to live our lives and deal with the chaos that is our lives. So, Megan, welcome. Let's get this party started.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you for having me, Nikki. This is a talk I don't always have the pleasure of doing. Usually when I come into groups like this, I'm teaching like step-by-step planning systems. But I love it when I have the opportunity to come in and talk about procrastination. I think it's super fitting, especially when I get with a room of people such as ourselves that are some form of business owner, freelancer, right? Where our time is our own, which is a blessing. And man, can it be a curse, right? It's really easy to be like, I'm going to get to that later. So today I'm going to be sharing with you a little bit of the brain science behind procrastination, because I think it's really important to understand why we even have it. And then 3 different tools that you can kind of add to your tool belt that you can pull from whenever you find yourself falling into that trap. So I've got some slides. I'm going to go ahead and get those shared, and then let's go ahead and jump right in. All right. So do any of you ever sit down to start on a task for work, for whatever it is that you're doing, and you look at it and you're like, I'm just going to get to that later, right? I think that this is something that we all have struggled with from time to time. So at its heart, procrastination, the Oxford Dictionary definition of it is simply this: the action of delaying or postponing something. All right. That's it. So let's talk about why we actually procrastinate. Procrastination isn't a personality trait. It's a habit. It's actually a habit that we embody, some of us more than others, because of how we experience stress, overwhelm, or anxiety. Now, for people who know me today, they typically don't believe me when I tell them that I was a world-class procrastinator. I actually invited my mom onto my podcast once, and the way she phrased it to everyone was that if procrastination had been an Olympic sport, I would have been a gold medal winner for the course of about 25 years. So procrastination was a habit that I 100% needed to learn how to break. And the tools that I'm going to be sharing with you guys today, I still have to use these, because if I don't, I will slip back into that bad habit of procrastinating. So typically when we think about procrastination, there are 3 types of events or things on our to-do list that lead us to want to procrastinate, right? So the first one, which is a pretty common one, is when we sit down, we look at what we're supposed to be doing, and we have I just don't want to do it, or it's something I don't like doing. Like I saw someone mention laundry in the chat. That's a big one for me. I don't like it. I'm never going to like it. It doesn't matter what time of the day I schedule it for. I don't want it. Yeah, exactly, Amy. So that's one category of things that will lead us potentially down into the procrastination hole. The second type of one is something that looks or has a perception to us of being potentially scary or hard. And that hard could be mentally, that hard could be physically, like this here. To me, this looks hard, scary, all the things, right? That it might be recording that video that you need to do, or putting that pitch together for somebody that you're putting that work for. And it could feel scary or it could feel hard for a number of reasons. So we put off doing that. And then the third reason why so many of us procrastinate is oftentimes we sit down to look at a task that we're going to do, and it's just so daunting, we don't even know where to start. So we went through this years ago when we had to clean out our attic. We had done a home remodel, and like the only space we could put stuff in was the attic. Yeah, exactly, Amy, overwhelm. And so it was one of those where we could barely open the door when we were moving back into our house. And every time we went in there, like we opened the door and it was just like, nope, just shut the door, like too overwhelming. I don't know where to start. So what happens then when we're in one of those situations where we don't want to, it feels too hard or scary, or we're overwhelmed? Well, instead, we actually shift to something we want to do, right? Something that brings us joy. And this is going to look different for absolutely everybody. It might be that you start doing a little bit of online shopping. That's one of my go-tos. Maybe you check out and just go do something totally relaxing, or you pick up your phone for inspiration, and an hour and a half later, you've sent 647 Instagram reels to your two sisters because that makes you laugh and brings you joy. Maybe you go to video games, maybe you relax, right? We all have our thing. And the key here is what we lean to is something that feels good to us in the moment, even if we know we're going to regret it later. Now, regardless of all of the reasons why we do this, it comes down to the way our brain is wired. All right. So at its heart, the reason we procrastinate is because our brain is feeling stress. All right. And so when we get to that point where we're looking at something we don't want to do, that's overwhelming, that's scary, it actually triggers a stress response in our brain. All right. And then our brain does exactly what it's designed to do. It says, we're feeling fight or flight. I need to go do something that's good. So it's really important to understand this, because when we do, like when I started learning about why I procrastinated just as much as I did, it made me feel better realizing my body is working exactly as it's designed to work. It is trying to take care of me by getting me out of stress and doing something that feels good. Just like automatically, maybe if you're not feeling well, you go take some medicine, right? So this is the reason why we get to first acknowledge it and say, great, thank you for doing what you're supposed to do. But I need to break this habit of allowing myself to slide into those things that feel good when I know that there is work that I need to be doing instead. All right. So there's two types of procrastination, and then the tools that we're going to walk through help with both types. And I'm going to tell you which one you might want to lean on a little bit more, depending upon the type of procrastination that you're going through. So the first one is destructive procrastination. All right. Destructive procrastination. This typically hits for those things that feel scary or hard, because that's when our anxiety triggers the most, when we really go into fight or flight mode or freeze mode. And destructive procrastination is when we shut down and do nothing. We walk away. We're like, I'm out of here. Now, this is the one that most people think about when they think about procrastination. But I will tell you, as a business owner, I'm a freelancer of sorts. The productive procrastination is the one that sneaks in and gets you the most. Productive procrastination hits a lot when it's the I don't want to's. All right. Or maybe you are a highly productive person and you've got your running list of things to do. And the first thing you look at, you're like, I don't want to do that. So you avoid it, but you start moving down your task list and doing a bunch of other things that are seemingly productive. And then usually what happens when you are a regular productive procrastinator is you end your day exhausted. You're like, man, I am whooped. You're like, but I didn't get anything really of value done today, right? That's a sign that you are a productive procrastinator. And guys, this is when I go back and forth between the destructive and productive. We all do. So the tools that I'm going to give you now, 3 different ones. Some work better for avoiding productive procrastination versus the destructive. All right. So the first tool is really around those tasks that look so daunting, like the attic task, right? And so tool number 1 is to learn how to, and this seems so obvious, but I'm going to give you a couple of examples because usually when we walk through these, people are like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. So the first tool is learning how to take those scary or daunting tasks and actually break them down into much smaller, meaningful, less scary bite-sized chunks to get done. All right, so perfect example for this. Let's say I dumped all these puzzle pieces out on the table. You had no picture, you had no nothing. I'm like, hey, go do this puzzle. I would just walk by it and be like, no thanks. So I would probably go into, well, this one I could go into either form of procrastination. I might just shut down depending upon how big that looked, or I might choose to go on and do something else instead. But let's say instead, I said, hey, these pieces just all fit together. Could you just go put these together? Now, suddenly that doesn't look so bad, right? Because we've got a much smaller, less scary thing to look at. So there's 2 strategies that we can go through when we're looking at something that feels really daunting to help us get it into smaller tasks. Now, the first one is typically used for a type of project where there are clear-cut steps that we know that we could go through. All right. So this is what I call creating work chunks. There's kind of a quick 4-step thing that we can go through here. So the first step in this, and I love to do this either with sticky notes and a blank wall, or if you use Trello, Trello is another great place to do this. And I will just rapid fire brainstorm everything that I could think of that would need to get done in order for this big project to get completed. All right. So if I'm thinking about the puzzle, I might be like, oh, I might want to, separate edges from insides, or maybe I will need to flip the pieces all over. Maybe I want to group them into colors. Maybe I need to get a picture of it. Right. And the key to this step number 1 is not stressing out about the order that you need to do it. So most people intrinsically know, yeah, of course I need to break this down. But where they get stuck is they keep overthinking this part because they think that the breaking it down process needs to be done in chronological order. It doesn't. And so when you give yourself that freedom to just let it go, brainstorm it all, and this is why I love using Post-it notes, 1 idea on Post-it note. Then once you've done that, and usually I'll set a timer for 10 minutes, like don't overthink this, just get as much out in 10 minutes as you can. Now you get to come back to it and say, okay, what makes sense in an order? And that's why I like Post-it notes, because now I can start moving them all around on my wall. Like, well, it probably makes sense to do this before that, this before that. And again, we don't have to get it perfect, but we just want to start to see where's a good place to start. Now I will just look at the first 2 items only. What were the first 2 tasks that are work chunks that I think make sense? And now I'm going to ask myself, can I get these down to be less than 1 hour of work? All right. So maybe with the puzzle, let's say I'm doing like a 5,000 piece puzzle and I realize, oh gosh, sorting all of that might take more than an hour. So then maybe I say, well, what if I just dump a quarter of the pieces out and sort those? I could get that done in 1 hour. And now I've got a small chunk to work with. So always try and get those first things to help get you into motion to be less than an hour. Now, the final step here is a really important one. Now you're actually going to go to your calendar, not a task list, not a scrap piece of paper, and you're going to look at and pick a date and time to do that first chunk. So again, not a task, but an actual appointment. So now you might look at your calendar and say, well, today and tomorrow are looking pretty full, but hey, Thursday at 2:00, I'm creating an appointment on my calendar and I'm going to label it that this is my work chunk to get this specific thing done. All right. So whenever things are feeling overwhelming, now suddenly you've got a small little thing to do and a specific date to do it. Now, the second tool we're going to talk about is going to come back to this here. Yeah. And then Amy, exactly. You don't have to think about it until that appointment's there. So then when you start to get anxious about, oh, I gotta start on that project, I already know when I'm starting on it. I've got that first appointment. All right. Now, sometimes we have those big daunting tasks like my attic that don't lend themselves well to step by step, right? It's just, to me, it was like, there's just literally crap everywhere. There is no way to organize this. I just need to get into motion. So this is when I like to use the strategy instead of time chunks. So the last one was work blocks, where we knew at the end, we're going to hit this specific goal. Well, when I couldn't even get 6 inches into my attic, what would that first goal be? I don't know. So in here, this is where I like to instead take a time chunk and ask yourself, how much time am I willing to spend on this daunting task in one sitting to just get myself in motion? So like for me, when we finally set on that, I was like, you know what? I just need to get in there for like 45 minutes and just see what I can do in 45 minutes. Like if I just set a timer, how far can I get? How many boxes can I get through? How much stuff can I start sorting? And then again, we're going to do the same thing. We're now going to go create the appointment on our calendar for that time block. And you can label it whatever you want. So for us, when we were starting to deal with the attic, it's like, okay, I'm going to get into that attic for 45 minutes. Then when the appointment hits, you're going to set your timer. And then when the timer's off, even if you're on a roll, stop. Because here's what will happen. All of a sudden we get moving. We're like, I'm in the zone, right? And then 4 hours later, we started doing all this stuff in there. Well, what you've told your brain is, every time I set foot in this attic, I'm going to be in here for 4 hours. And you are not going to want to come back. So when that timer goes off, finish and leave, because you kind of like, you want to leave on a high note, right? The last thing you want is that last season that was just so bad, you don't want to watch it anymore. So you want to leave feeling energized, having seen that you've made some progress and not dreading going back. All right. And then you just get to repeat this at whatever cadence that you want. And so, after we had done a couple rounds in the attic, we were able to kind of figure out this is probably going to be a 4-month job for us if we spend 2 hours every weekend in here. And it was, but we saw progress. We didn't dread it because we didn't do that. We got to get in there and spend 3 straight days in the attic. So these are good strategies that actually helps your brain build confidence that you can handle those bigger projects, either by achieving those smaller work chunks or by going through these time chunks instead. Now, another tool that we can use, and this is, again, it ties back into this concept of creating an appointment, is we need to learn how to create a complete, comprehensive plan for our week. All right. So what do I mean when I talk about creating a complete or comprehensive plan? It means that you need to have a plan for your week, not your day, that is showing you all the realities of your life, not just your work tasks or appointments. All right. And we're going to kind of show some visuals here of how and why this helps you prevent procrastination. So chances are this probably looks semi-familiar to some of you. I'm sure everybody has some calendaring system that they're using out there, right? Google Calendar, iCal, paper planner, whatever it is. And most of us today already capture appointments on there, doctor's appointments, meetings. Maybe you have the freelance summit here on your calendar for today. Then next to it, we have this huge to-do list, right? So we're like, okay, here's my commitments for the day. And usually the things on our calendar are things where we are committed to somebody else. So we're going to honor that. Like, well, I've got a doctor's appointment, take the kids to school or whatever. And so what we're doing here is we've got these commitments. We've got this long list of stuff that we're cherry picking from or procrastinating on, right? And so this lends itself to procrastination. Because when I look at this, look at all that white space, right? So maybe on Tuesday, I'm like, oh yeah, I got to work on that project. And I sit down and look at my list. I'm like, ooh, I don't want to do that. But look, I have all this time. So it's okay that I don't do it right now. Now, on the flip side, if we learn how to merge these two together, all of our commitments, along with everything that we are desiring to get done for the week, and we merge them together. Now, this is what a true complete weekly plan looks like. Not only does it include my commitments to others, and you don't need to worry about the actual words that are on there, but it's actually translating that list of stuff to do into specific days and times that I'm going to be working on those. So let's talk about what should be in this complete weekly plan. And this is kind of the 5 basic steps. And I'll share with you guys a resource at the end of this where you can kind of see how to do this in action. But what should be on that plan is, again, your current commitments. You've probably already got those there. So look at you guys, you're already rocking it. One thing done. The second thing that should go on to this plan is what I call your busy time or your unavailable time. So this is time when you're awake, you are in motion, but you're not going to be getting anything done on your list of stuff to do. So for instance, for me, I get up around 5:15, 5:30. I am in motion all morning long, but I'm not going to be at my desk to do any work till 8:30. But I want to capture that on my calendar so it doesn't look like I have all this available time. And everybody's busy time is going to look very different depending upon your stage of life. The other things that should be on your plan is personal time. I am not a hustle, go, stay up late, wake up early kind of a person. I cherish things for myself. So things that go on my calendar for my personal time for me are things like practicing my cello, doing some crafting, family time. Maybe for you, it's the gym. Maybe it's dinner out with a friend, whatever that is, things that are in service to you that fill you up, not in service to others. Then the last types of things that should go onto your plan, there are 2 types, your recurring tasks and your one-off tasks. So most of us have things that we have decided we want to get done on the regular, like every week. All right. So maybe there's newsletters you need to do. Maybe you need to give a report to the clients that you're working for every week with status updates, things like that. So creating routines around those and getting the time allocated in your plan to get those done. When you just do that, it's usually very eye-opening on how much of your time is spent on recurring tasks. So it was very fascinating. I have a freelancer that is on my team, and she has a number of recurring tasks, and she is contracted to work with me for 10 hours a week. Well, when we went through her recurring tasks, we uncovered 7 hours of her 10 hours of time are spent on those recurring tasks every week. But it's really powerful for us to know that. So I know I have 3 hours to work with for new stuff to be able to add to her plate every week. But until you go and put this into your calendar, you're always going to think you have more time than you do. Always. Because we were thinking, oh yeah, it's what, maybe 2 to 3 hours a week on recurring stuff. And then I've got all this other time. But no, we didn't. And then we get to put in those one-off tasks, those larger projects. So all of this should be built into and reflected on your weekly plan. So again, how does this help us with procrastination? So as I mentioned, we always think we have more time than we do. So if I sit down at my desk in the morning and this is all I have on my calendar, and let's say it's Wednesday morning, and I'm like, oh, it's 8:30 in the morning. I'm looking at my day. I'm like, it's looking pretty open. And I'm realizing I've got to get this writing done. I'm really not in the mood to write a blog post. I really don't like writing blog posts. I'll do that this afternoon. Right. And then I get into productive procrastination mode where I start working on other tasks. But that blog post was the most important thing. Now, on the flip side, if I sit down at my desk and I'm looking at a plan like this, and I see, okay, Wednesday morning, I have written down that I am going to spend an hour writing that blog post. I'm still going to have the same reaction. Ugh, I really don't want to write that blog post. But then I'm going to look at the rest of my week and I'm going to see, if I don't do this now, when am I going to get it done? Because if I don't do it now, it's going to create a domino effect. Because look, if I think I'm going to do it in the afternoon, well, the afternoon was when I was going to be working on this other thing, or it's when I need to realize maybe I'm in, what I call mom mode that afternoon with a bunch of stuff going on around the house. And so when we put this in front of us, it actually helps remind us how much time we have. I like to equate it to money. So when we think about it, if I were to send you to the grocery store and tell you to go buy a bunch of stuff for dinner, one of the first questions you're probably going to ask me is, how much money do I have? What's my budget? Because it's going to help you make choices about what you're going to purchase. And so ultimately, that's what creating this comprehensive plan does for you, is it tells you what your budget of time is so that you don't continually think that you're going to have more time than you do. It's really important for us to understand this fundamental concept, which is a task list, a list of all the things that you want to get done, is not a plan. All right. All it is a bunch of things to get done. The plan is what's going to tell you how and when, and then remind you of your time budget to help you avoid procrastinating. Now, the third tool is one that I pair a lot around food. I really like to eat. And it's called, but you don't have to. I'll give you examples that don't involve food. So it's called temptation bundling. So even when I've got the other tools working, maybe I've got my plan for the week, right? And again, it's Wednesday morning and I'm sitting down and I need to do that blog post, right? Oh, I don't want to do it. And I can see clearly that this is the time to do it. There's no other good time. Temptation bundling is when we can find something that we do like, that we can partner or pair together with something that we don't like to make the process a little bit more enjoyable. So, for example, when I have to do writing work, if I'm doing it in the morning, I will go treat myself to my favorite smoothie bowl. And that's the only time I get to have that. If I'm doing it in the afternoon, I'm going to make up my favorite guac. I'm going to be like, okay, I get to sit down and enjoy my chips and guac while I am doing the writing that doesn't feel like something I want to do. So that's what we mean with temptation bundling. Another example that a lot of people will use is maybe you've got some health and wellness goals and oh, I've got to go get on the treadmill. I don't want to. Well, what if you save your favorite show that you're binging and you say, I only get to watch that while I'm on my bike or my treadmill? That's another example of temptation bundling. And so because what we're doing is we're kind of short wiring our brain and going, because again, your brain, remember, it wants to make you happy, wants to give you something that makes you feel good. Well, that guacamole makes me feel great. Watching my latest episode makes me feel great. So now our brain's like, well, heck yeah, let's go do that. Instead of it going, ooh, let's avoid that. It's like, no, that's a dopamine hit. So it's a way to help us, again, avoid some procrastination. So the next time you feel the urge to procrastinate, so maybe you're sitting down and you're looking at what you've planned to do and you're like, I really don't want to do this. Here are the 5 things that you can do to help you get over that. First and foremost, acknowledge that you are wanting to procrastinate and determine why. Because I think so many of us are like, oh, I'm going to pretend like I'm not. Own it. Because remember, this isn't a personality trait. This isn't something wrong with you. This is normal. And this is a habit that we all have. So when I sit down, and my family is used to hearing me talk to myself when I'm working through procrastinating, I will look at it and go, I really don't want to do that right now. And I'm like, okay, why don't I want to do that right now? And I'll actually have that conversation. Does this feel scary? Does it feel hard? Am I just not in the mood? Does it feel too daunting? And then once I know why, the very next step is to forgive yourself, right? And say, hey, and actually kind of thank yourself at the same time. Hey, thank you, brain. I appreciate that you are recognizing that this is stressful. And I realize that you're wanting me to slide into that habit of procrastination. And I'm going to forgive myself for doing that because it's a habit and I'm still working on breaking it. All right. And there's actual scientific data showing that people who do that are more likely to stop procrastinating. And it feels crazy when you're doing it, I promise. But after a while, it starts to feel kind of good. Then you get to go into action and say, okay, what tool am I going to use? What's going to help me right now? Is this something that's too big that I need to break down into smaller chunks? Am I falling into the trap of thinking I have more time than I do and I need to get realistic about that, right? Or am I recognizing it and I just don't want to do it? Okay, what is something I can pair with this right now? How can I create a temptation bundling experience to help me get through this. All right. Then you get to get into action with whichever tool that you chose. And then when you're done, give yourself a high five for having done it. Now, for some people, rather than temptation bundling, they like to use a strategy of a reward at the end of task completion. For other people, that doesn't work. All right. So not everybody, I am one that is highly motivated by like awards or rewards. Even if I don't want them, I'm like, if I do this and I win something, I'm here for it. So make sure you know that about yourself to know which strategy could potentially work better for you. If it's having something, maybe it's your favorite music, right? Something like that during the task. Or maybe you want to give yourself a treat for having finished something. And again, treats don't always have to be food. They probably shouldn't always be food. That's a gentle reminder to myself as well. So think of other things that you can use for that. And then I wanted to share with you guys today a great tool where you can see an example of exactly how to create one of those comprehensive weekly plans, going through those 5 steps. And I've got a free training out there that just shows you just that. It's called Weekly Planning Training, and it's actually available inside of my app. So I have an app in the App Store called the Pink Bee. It's both Google Play and iOS. Full disclosure, to host the app, it is $1.99. It's not recurring or anything like that, but there's a bunch of mini trainings in there. And one of them does show you that weekly planning. I tried to squeeze it into today, but it just takes too long. So I at least wanted to give you an overview of what it looks like, but I want to make sure you have a tool to go in and actually see how to do that as well.
Good stuff, right? I was just saying to Kate and Caitlin, like, oh, I'm so excited about all of the speakers this year. Thanks for tuning in. Do you want to learn how to sell and scale your offer on autopilot every single day without the chaos of live launching or the low conversions of Evergreen? Who doesn't, right? Get our free on-demand video training at circuitsalessystem.com/free. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to this channel to make sure you never miss a video. We'll catch you next time.